Hello, my gorgeous wild dreamers, my fellow space blobs, and those of us who are just coming to know ourselves in new forms and in new ways that we never expected. When I tell you I am excited about today's topic, I really mean it because we get to talk about my personal ruling planet, a planet that I think many of us have a really deep love of, and that is Jupiter. I mean, just saying Jupiter puts a smile on my face. I think for me, it brings back my joy. It's so easy right now with some of the heaviness and the tension in the world and just kind of seeing these really dark, shadowy wounds just festering up. It's a tough thing, and it can bring some of the joy levels down, like for real. But also, I think so many of us have been experiencing this thing where while we're watching and we're noticing, we're feeling those deep, heavy emotions, we're also resonating and clarifying and finding those windows of joy at a level like we never have before in life. I know that's true for me. And the thing that I really love about exploring with Jupiter is that it can help us to really get back into expansive thinking. And what I will say is we're going to be talking about Jupiter moving into Cancer. And this is a really natural placement for Jupiter. It's exalted in Cancer. And this is a combo that is deeply about leadership, like true nurturing, mothering, clarifying, focused, intuitive leadership that is caring, empathic, compassionate, and no nonsense, honestly. And it's an energy of renewal. It's an energy of understanding that working through the modality of the great mother, working through the modality of deep, deep, deep kindness and intuition allows for new things to coalesce. Not only that, I think sometimes when we think about Jupiter, we think about expansion, we think about fun, we think about play, we think about exploring. But Jupiter is also deeply tied to this idea of growing up. And I don't mean in kind of that mature, pay your mortgage, go to your job at 8 a.m., put your khakis on kind of growing up. I'm talking about the growing up that has to do with our soul, like growing toward our soul more in life, remembering it, growing up in the cosmic sense, going toward our higher self and really, really meaning it, not in the concept of the production culture and all of that busyness, but in really moving toward a deeper sense of soul in our lives, in the way we communicate. And so this is a really exciting combination. And we're just going to talk through like, how do we work with Jupiter? What did we just move through with Jupiter and Gemini? What can we focus on when thinking about working with Jupiter and Cancer? And just spoiler alert for what's ahead in this chat, there's a lot to look forward to with Jupiter and Cancer. And in many ways, it's going to be kind of a breath of relief after the intensity of Jupiter and Gemini. We're going to get real about that in a moment. So I think that this is going to be one of the transits coming up here over this next year that is really going to support so many of us and help us coalesce and create new things and get more in touch with what is next. So let's dive right in to this amazing topic. I always love to begin by just reconnecting to the energetics of Jupiter, coming back to basics. It helps me really feel into how I personally like to work with Jupiter and just reflect on the cosmic beauty of this energy. Jupiter is often known as the planet of expansion. I would say that's its tagline. That's kind of the first thing that comes up when talking about Jupiter, in contrast to Saturn, which is the planet of restriction and containers and like the material world. Jupiter, on the other hand, is very spiritual. And in many ways, when we're talking about Jupiter and this idea of expansion, I think at its core, that really specifically means expanding and growing into our higher selves, because Jupiter is also deeply connected to religion, philosophy, spirituality, and the way we use our imagination and our vision and our big picture thinking to get closer to that quote unquote higher self. And I think what I really mean when I say that is just like, I think Jupiter throughout our lives is constantly inviting us to really think about what we're expanding, and does that reflect who we truly are? And are we willing to get visionary and optimistic and spiritually connected enough to see the world from some different perspectives? And I think that's one thing that often also comes up when talking about Jupiter, is that it requires a really great level of discernment, because all expansion is not good expansion, right? I think so many of us have found, living in the modern world where it's always like more, more is more. And, like that never ending hunger that comes when we try to do more at all times, that kind of expansion just feels totally soulless. And so it's always super important working with Jupiter, we're being intentional, and I think just because this is a planet of optimism and expansion, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just willy-nilly. I think in fact, when we really want to work with this planet, it will work so well with us. This energy will work so well with us the more intentional we get with it, the more intuitive we get with it. And I think this is also, I think working with Jupiter, personally for me, this is an energy that I connect with throughout my life. It's one that's just been very important for me. But I know like sometimes we can feel like we're not worthy of optimism or spiritual love or growth into those next phases. So whenever we're working with Jupiter, I think it's actually really important. It's a deep energy of compassion. And often when we're working with Jupiter, one of the lessons we're learning, if you're in a phase where you're having a Jupiter return, or Jupiter is visiting some part of your chart, or you're just feeling drawn to Jupiter, it's because you're being asked to really allow yourself to feel worthy of beauty, of connection, of intuition, of expansion toward what feels true for you, of evolving into that next version, and not just having to stay the cramped version that our families or systems expect of us. And I think that's one of those like hidden depths to Jupiter that often gets skipped over, because it's often talked about, I think, on such superficial terms about like more and shining bright. So I just wanted to like remind us that this is a journey of deep self-compassion when working with Jupiter. Also, really deep intuitive self-empowerment. So with all of that in mind, we just have to take a moment right now to witness the last year of Jupiter as it moved through Gemini, because oh my goodness, was that a journey. I think many of us are feeling a little like we just got whipped around in a lot of different directions, because I think Jupiter moving through Gemini is a very, very dynamic combo. One of the inherent qualities of working with Jupiter and Gemini is that it expands our ability to hold paradox, which means, holding more than one thing as true at the same time. And the discomfort of that sometimes, but also learning to navigate being able to hold many things as true simultaneously. It's helped, I think, many of us when I'm sitting here kind of thinking about what this last year of Jupiter's journey in Gemini has been about. I think it's helped many of us to hold our lives and our process with a lot more nuance and wisdom, to understand that really dark things can be going on, and I can also be an okay person right here. Things like that, just sometimes really basic paradoxes that are just an innate part of this world, I think were really, really highlighted. And I think in general, this last year of Jupiter and Gemini, it's really brought up a lot of these paradoxes that we kind of have to hold to when we live these human lives. And I think so many of us have been experiencing this paradox in this experience of feeling very, very crushed, sad, overwhelmed. Maybe we've been dealing with anxiety or depression or other elements of our makeup, and even old woundings that have contributed to the way that we're wired or the way we experience things, experiencing all of that and experiencing this huge sense of liberation, of coming home, of using our imaginations in a different way. And I think Jupiter and Gemini is a really reflective of that experience so many of us have been having over the last year. I think also the other thing, just in reflecting on Jupiter and Gemini, is that it amplified the use of imagination, which in some ways was a really, really awesome thing. And what helped so many of us kind of consider who we could be and what life could look like and what it might feel like, and maybe even made life changes. Jupiter and Gemini was very dynamic in that way of moving pieces around. So some of us might have found that we made some really powerful changes during this year. But on the other hand, imagination can run in a lot of different ways. And Gemini is a very dualistic devil's advocate and angel, devil on the shoulder, angel on one shoulder kind of energy. And so on the other hand, I think some of us have been exploring what imagination does when it takes us to our dark places, to the underworld in a way. So I think this journey with Jupiter and Gemini has been quite intense. Let's be real. Like, when I sat down to kind of start feeling through the Jupiter journey before this, I realized, I was like, yeah, I was very optimistic. I was very optimistic about the beautiful qualities of Jupiter and Gemini, and I stand by that because I think it's helped a lot of us change and navigate and open our minds to who we could be and wear a lot of different hats and try on different outfits and not feel so stuck in one identity. But I will say, I think for a lot of us, it might have felt a little bit scattered. It might have felt a little bit all over the place. And it did. It just kind of like expanded our flexibility on so many levels. But it also required, I think, a lot of energy to like find our center. So what did you feel as Jupiter was moving through Gemini? I really love hearing how people worked with it or how your like life was working with it. I know for me, I made a lot of like adjustments and changes. I moved houses, I moved apartments here in the city to a much better place, and I opened my mind to different ways of moving through life. But I also felt unmoored at times, and sometimes even a little bit out of my intuition. And I don't just blame that on Jupiter and Gemini, but it was an interesting mixed bag of experiences for me, holding those paradoxes, So I'd love to hear what came up for you. So with all of that in mind, moving into this season of Jupiter in Cancer, where it is exalted, which just means it really functions beautifully. The energy is very resonant here. It's going to amplify a lot of the beautiful qualities of Jupiter in its spiritual and intuitive giftedness, which is very exciting. And it's such a different tone to working with Gemini. I always love the interesting combo of Gemini and Cancer because it is quite the flavor switch up, I would say, every time we switch into Cancer season. Cancer is the sign of the crab, the moon, the intuitive, the womb, the hidden, the internal world, the great mother, the domestic sphere, but not, I think, in the patriarchal sense as much as what we create when we're not in our public facing persona. How we connect to soul and spirit, not for the benefit of external performance, but for something much truer and deeper. It is an initiation into the great psychic mother and the soulful mother and the life of beauty that can come from working with it. And I have a really, really deep love of Cancer. It's one of my favorite energies to work with. Truly, truly, like means so much to me. And is one of the places where some of the best art, creativity, ideas, and visionary energy comes through. Now, I think it's really meaningful that Jupiter is moving into Cancer right now. We are working with a lot of energies that are moving into, like, we got Saturn and Neptune over there in Aries and that initiation energy. And we're working still with, like, Uranus is about to move into Gemini. We are needing this specific influence, I think, in a really, really powerful cultural way that I think it's very well timed. Good job, Cosmos, I guess, for bringing this archetype pairing together, because this energy is going to amplify what I'm kind of calling the great mother. Like, the great mother is awoken. And this energy, because it's a qualitative, animistic, very powerful psychic energy, cosmos energy, aspect of the divine, aspect of the great weaving, however you want to think about it. This energy is extremely fierce, but deeply compassionate, deeply nurturing, and is very no nonsense about that. So the Great Mother does not tolerate cruelty or power plays for the sake of looking a certain way, or that, you know, we can force ourselves through life. It's like, nope, forget that. This combo of Jupiter and Cancer is all about how leadership comes from this deep, deep resonance, this deep, deep intuitive presence. And people who are able to cultivate like that calm, centered self-respect are going to find that intuition and movement in life is really, really working for them. I mean, I am thinking about that a lot because whenever I let myself cultivate that energy, life does go better. And things do start to work in a much deeper, realer way. And basically, in a nutshell, this transit, which is going to last for 13 months from June 9th, 2025 till July 2026, is going to be about deliberately, and I mean really deliberately, cultivating your connection to your deep inner mother, to the Great Mother, and to your intuition. And just making that be one of the central things you're doing in the mundane and the day-to-day. And so a lot of us, that's going to mean taking a step back from overconsumption of technology. That's one way that this can come about, or busy schedules, any kind of like numbing out tactics we might have been using to deal with things, because many of us are going to be feeling this call. And this is just like my general sense. So, you know, we're all going to do this differently. This is not a prediction of any sorts, but I think many of us are going to be feeling this call to deliberately pulling our attention and putting it into this Great Mother intuitive energy, feeling it in our bodies, cultivating a deep mothering energy in ourselves, creating our own connection to that. And that the more we're doing that and we're letting ourselves move with that energy, something really cool happens, because as we start to really, really, really dedicate regular energy to mothering ourselves, to really, really being present for that, guess what starts to happen? You start dressing like yourself. You start making like life choices, just even little ones that are really, really caring of your body and of your life. And I mean, yeah, and just how you move through your day. If you're somebody like me who has a very powerful inner dictator that would like to get everything done on time, this kind of inner mothering energy is going to change up the power dynamics there, the more that we are deliberately working with it. So as a direct result of deliberately saying, I'm going to value inner mothering and intuition as one of the guideposts for what I'm doing for this next year, it's going to have a series of results to it, because it's going to help you get in touch with your next creative expressions, with how you want to dress or express yourself creatively, and how you want to move towards your life. It will also amplify life changes. I think when we start to really be kind to ourselves, when we start to genuinely nurture ourselves, there is a no nonsense to it, but there's also a sense of just like unconditional love. Life starts moving and changing. It does not stay stagnant. And I will say, you know, Cancer is the cardinal water sign, which means it's initiating us in, it's baptizing us into new forms, new expressions. And many of us are going to be feeling like we're rebirthing parts of ourselves that have been repressed or put away on a shelf to get us through life. And some of the other qualities of working with Jupiter and Cancer are that this is a really beautiful one for amplifying your belief in your process. You know, they've done studies around synchronicity, and there's a book called The Awakened Brain that I can definitely recommend if you're looking for like a fun exploration of psychology and spirituality, and some of the first studies they have done in combining those two. But they were saying that people who lean into experiencing synchronicity, not so much in a paranoid way, you know, and like kind of over assessing every single sign and signal, but in a relaxed way, in an open way, the people who are open to experiencing synchronicity tend to experience more and more of it. They tend to experience more and more interconnected sense of belonging. So this is a really beautiful moment here, as we're about to go on this journey with Jupiter and Cancer, to really deliberately say, I am going to let intuition guide me. I'm going to let this deep mothering energy help me repair my relationship to intuition and synchronicity, and to allow things to go in these new, unexpected, or interesting ways. That's another side of this, actually, with Jupiter and Cancer. There's a quality of Jupiter and Cancer. If you have that in your natal chart, you might have noticed this, that you have like this really naturally innate way of being quite creative and a little bit like off the beaten path. Like even just what you wear might be like interesting combos of patterns. Maybe how you've approached problems are going to be a little bit more, like, I use this word with like all the love and awe and respect, like a little funky, like a little like, ooh, that's an interesting combo. That is like the natural expression of Jupiter and Cancer. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. That's not normal. Like, that's not the usual, recipe. We added a little dash of cinnamon in there. Oh, that's interesting. A little spicy. How are we willing? Because Jupiter and Cancer, it's such empowered inner mothering energy that people feel free when they have it. And there is just this innate, intuitive, natural quality to it. It's not about following the script. It's not about like, oh, well, this is what I was told to do. It's about flowing with what wants to come. So some of the questions that I like to ask, and these can feel very taboo right now. I'm just going to say that. Like you may be annoyed at me when I'm saying these, depending on how upset you are about pain points in the world, or if you're having a harder, easier day. Believe me, I feel taboo doing this stuff all the time, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think it's important. How good are you willing to let it get? Are you willing to let go of the status quo? Do you feel worthy of a life that feels loving, nurturing, and natural to you? There is another layer to all of this, which is just this healing, fundamental healing quality that I think so many of us on an individual level are longing for, and on a societal level, we need. We need this kind of leadership and intentionality. And I think we're just hungry for it. And because of that hunger for it, I think there's a receptivity to it in a way that I don't know if I've ever seen in this life. And I forgot to mention that, the last time that Jupiter was in Cancer, which I just love to kind of explore, was June 2013 to July 2014, because it takes about 13 years for Jupiter to go through all 12 signs. So it's also interesting to think about what was going on 2013 into 2014. That was a weird time for me. I did not have the best boyfriend at that time, I have to say. But I think I was learning a lot about inner mothering. And yeah, so trusting your intuition, developing inner mothering, really getting into the richness of that. That's what Jupiter and Cancer is all about. What do you feel about this? What are some of the questions that come up for you when you think about working with an energy like this? I feel like I could talk about that topic for so long. I have this abiding passion for Jupiter and Cancer. It just brings me joy. I think we really are going to enjoy this transit. I think many of us are longing for this kind of energy right now. We're hungry for it. It's time. And it'll be interesting to see where it leads us. Every time I sit here, I'm not able to predict how all the things will coalesce. I can just sit here and feel the poetry and energy of it. But I do think there's something important that's going to be going on, and the energies are going to be shifting. And I couldn't resist just pulling a card to kind of connect with this intuitive process we've been on together. Oh, and 2 cards wanted to come out. Beautiful. We have the Ace of Wands, New Beginnings, and the King of Pentacles. I love this because for me, so much about the energy of this year is about these new initiations into the new, into the next, with working with cardinal energy and Aries and Cancer and sparking new ideas. And I do think this is one of those very, very creatively deep transits and pairs where, ideas just kind of come up from our unconscious and from our intuitive daydreaming, like in a way that is very, very special to this specific combo. We don't get Jupiter and Cancer all that often in this exalted place. So this is like Jupiter's moment to help us express and expand. So being open to that. I love the King of Pentacles is here too, because for me, I kind of think about this beautiful year of planting seeds really intentionally. If you just spend like a year being super kind to yourself, super intuitive, listening, moving with it, and letting that spill out to like all the people around you and your life choices, what amount of seeds could you plant that changes everything? The King of Pentacles is the long range vision and how we hold something over time and that garden grows and it makes something new and it creates a new foundation. Kings are about building foundation, leadership from kindness and cultivation. And I think that energy is doing its thing. What's beautiful about working with Cancer is it is behind the scenes, so it doesn't always give us the external validation immediately. We might be working with some of that mystic energy for a little while, but it doesn't mean the garden isn't growing. It doesn't mean the new foundations aren't coming together. I think it's really important to remember. I need that reminder every week, every single week, but I think those cards are so beautiful. What did you see when those two came out in this discussion? I love thinking about this transit, and I would also love to help you continue to connect with your intuition. I like to think that I have a really deep connection with that kind of great mother energy. It's like the honor of my life to feel and cultivate that energy in myself and to share it in the spaces I create. And right now I'm really creating that space for my wild dreamers over on Patreon, and I would love to have you there with me, honestly. We are wild dreaming at the crossroads, and we're spending all of June exploring our exiles and bringing them home and finding our creative voice and our intuition as we restore and give sustenance to our exiles. And then in July, we're working with tricksters, and in August, we are working with fools. Wild dreaming is a modality that I've been developing over the last few years that involves journaling, visualizing, using kind of surrealist art practices, and allowing ourselves to make absurdist or bizarre pieces that really reflect what our unconscious is wanting to express to us, and freeing ourselves and developing tool sets to move through this dynamic time. And I created the Wild Dreaming at the Crossroads journey to really be a helpful way to navigate a very, very dense and intense time and feel extremely empowered in your magic and intuition. So I'd love to see you there. You can join at any time and catch up on the episodes that are already out. We just began the journey, so there's a lot more ahead. And I would love to see you back here. Every time you comment and subscribe and like these videos, it helps me get to do this work. I know the internet is always screaming for everybody's attention. I trust that who's here wants to be here, and we'll find each other in the right time. And I'm grateful for every single one of you who's with me. That's just so beautiful that that resonance is there. But I will see you back here because we have the Cancer new moon coming up and Cancer season ahead. It's going to be such a beautiful, rich time. And I am so thrilled that we get to be on the journey together.